Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, which is so capably run and handled by our wonderful library here in downtown Cincinnati. And Dennis Daly, historian, is our videographer. And this morning we're talking with Bus Haberthier. You say Thayer or Thier?
Thier.
Thier.
Yeah.
Haberthier. And I had the joy and I have the joy of knowing his brother Roger. So the Haberthier brothers are very prominent in veterans activities here in Cincinnati on the west side of town. Now, but we have this good program going, Buzz, and where were you born?
Cincinnati.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born on Spring Grove Avenue. In
Spring Grove Avenue, and tell me about your family. I know Roger, but...
Well, it's all German. They come down in the mid-1800s.
Yeah, Haberthier means something, doesn't it?
Oh, well, Haberdasher.
Haberdasher?
Yeah.
Oh, be darned.
And
okay.
they settled in over the Rhine,
Yep.
which was a nice neighborhood at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Then we separated there and went to South Fairmount.
Now, where did you go to primary school?
Roosevelt School, right there in South Fairmount.
Okay. Is that school still there?
Yes.
I'll be darned.
It's on Tremont Avenue.
Okay, all right. And now you had brother. Any other siblings?
I have two younger sisters.
Two younger sisters.
Yeah.
Oh, what a nice family. So your dad had this business downtown, huh?
Well, he was a truck driver. He drove for Hatfield Coal and Gravel Company.
Oh, sure.
And he hauled coal in the winter and gravel and sand and that in the summer. So that was
Right.
yeah.
Did you learn the business too?
Oh no.
You didn't have to shovel
Oh no,
coal?
I didn't want to drive those old trucks.
No.
They had chains on the wheels and solid tires, and when my dad was driving.
Oh my gosh.
So now when we moved over to Fairmount, and I went to, well, in 1930, the crash, we moved out to East End by Lunken Airport.
Oh, you did?
Yes, my great-grandfather had a cottage out there, and he was getting up in age, so he moved in with my grandmother on Quebec Road. So then we moved out in his place in East End. And I went to McKinley School on Eastern Avenue to the 8th grade. And then 37 flood washed our house away. And we moved back into South Fairmount again. So then my mother's brother, which is my Uncle George, he was an electrical engineer. And he kept saying at that time, around 37, he said, electricity is going to be the big thing. He says, people have these gas lights in these big homes and they come in and turn the gas light on, you know, this is... And he says, he's been putting switches on the wall and lights in the kitchen, and people are amazed. They walk in, turn a switch, and the whole kitchen lights up. He says, this is a trade. He says, this is a good trade. So
He was really wise.
So he talked me into going to electrical high school.
Okay.
And I learned the trade.
All right, now after elementary school, you're going to high school. What high school was that?
Electrical Vocational High School.
Electrical vocation?
Yeah, it was 4 years, and they did it in 2. You went to school around the clock.
Oh.
All year long.
Summer and everything.
Yeah.
Well, now, did you take any other subjects besides electricity? Did you take English and math?
Oh, yeah. We had the regular school.
All the regular curriculum?
Oh, yes. That was half a day, and electrical theory and all that, and shop was the other.
Did you
day.
like that?
Oh, yes. I enjoyed it.
I know. Everybody that got into electricity.
Well, you can't see it. You have to know in theory where it is.
That's
you know, if you open a panel box, you don't want to stick your hand in there if you don't know what you're looking at.
That's right. You know, what the heck is this? Is that right?
Yes.
Exactly.
And that served me well in the Navy then, too.
Well, I'm sure it did. Where was that school?
It was down on 6th Street by Broadway.
Over here, yeah. 6th and Broadway. I'll be a son of a gun. I didn't know that existed. Well, that's right over there by old St. Xavier Church, no, that's on Sycamore. So you were a block east of that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's very interesting to know, and a lot of people today, don't know about that. Electrical vocational high school. Now,
Well, the guys that were going to regular high school, they couldn't find jobs at that time.
sure. Oh,
And
that
you
was-
had to have a trade. I wanted to be a carpenter, but I couldn't work those big saws. They weren't powered hand saws at that time.
Oh, that's
So
right.
I was like carpenter work, yeah, but,
It was all muscle work.
yeah. Excuse me, when I came graduated from there, I had 3 job offers, even before I got out of there.
How about that? So you would have been the class of what, 1940?
1939, I
1939.
graduated.
Okay. All right. 3 job offers. Now that's pretty darn good. Which one did you take?
I took the one with Lackner Sign Company. They were down on York Street,
Over in the West End.
yeah, by the ballpark, the old
Oh,
bar
yeah.
park. And
Old Crossley.
I worked myself through the sub-assembly and into the big sign shop where they bring the signs out of the painting and then put all the insulators on and the neon on them. And I was doing that. Then whenever one of the servicemen needed help, I'd go out with him hanging a sign or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't long before I had my own truck and my own route through the city.
Good for you.
So,
Yeah.
and at that time, I was making $1 an hour, which was fabulous
Oh.
at that time.
Some people were making $1 a week.
And but I didn't like climbing around all these buildings down here, and we didn't have the kind of clothes for the winter that you have now. We weren't allowed to take our uniforms off when we were working on a roof someplace.
Hmm.
So there was an opening for Cincinnati Shaper Company for electricians.
Mhm.
So I went and joined them. I joined them in '41, and I came out of that company in 1988.
My goodness sake. Now, Shaper,
47 years.
That was over on the west side too.
That was, excuse me, that was in Camp Washington,
Camp Washington.
by the Camp Washington School.
Okay, okay. Wasn't there a Cincinnati company that made lathes?
Yes, they were behind us. Shipley,
But that was-
Shipley.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Oh, boy, and of course that lathe business, that was such a big thing here.
Well, we were building press brakes and shears
Hmm,
for bending large
Right.
pieces of metal, and shearing metal.
sure. Well, now, in a person's life, there are certain times that you never forget where you were when blah, blah, blah happened, And one I like to ask of our interviewees is, where were you when you heard the news on the December the 7th, 1941?
I was working in the company.
You
I was
were?
an electrician, yeah. We were
Yeah.
in an electrical room there,
Yeah,
and we heard it then.
heard it on the
It was
radio?
on- Yeah, it was on a Sunday morning. We were working 7 days a week,
Oh, you were? I was
Yeah.
going to ask you about that,
yeah.
because that was a Sunday, yeah. Well, isn't that something? And so everybody kind of, what's going on?
It was,
How come?
it was a
What's
big
happening?
shock. It was a big
That was a
shock.
big thing. That was terrible, terrible, terrible. Yeah, I know I was. Now, in the men with whom you were working, you were all electrical trained people, right?
In the group, yes. They
In the
were all
group.
electricians.
Mm-hmm. And when you say shaper, what kind of a product was that?
Well, it was shapers where they put pieces in a vise in the front and they keep cutting it down to whatever design they want. And then press brakes bend sheet metal, like making refrigerators or stoves, or where you have to bend that metal to make it formed. And then shears, which cut the pieces to size. Yeah.
Boy. Was that dangerous work?
Not particularly.
Yeah.
Not the assembly floor. The
learn,
maintenance
you learn.
maintenance was very, very
Sure.
That's how I got hurt in maintenance.
Oh. Well, now, the end of high school, but, so, class of 39, you still had a couple of years to go before we got into the war. When Pearl Harbor happened, did you immediately think about the military, or what was your attitude?
Well, we were doing military work, so, yeah, and I was 19
Right.
and at the time, and well, let's see what draft's going to be and all that. But then in 1942, on September, it was my 20th birthday, I signed up for the Navy.
And you, I mean, you had zeroed in on the Navy. That's
Yes.
what you wanted to,
Yeah.
where you wanted to go. Yeah, I was the same way. Well, so there you were, you got into the Navy. They gave you a pretty good physical exam.
Yes, and all the tests that they give you,
I
you know,
know.
the different.
Aptitude and all that.
Right, and I scored pretty good on that. So
I'll bet
they
you
offered
did.
me schooling,
Oh,
any kind of
yeah.
schooling that I wanted.
Yeah, well, what you had in education and work experience already and everything.
So I chose Navy electrician
Uh-huh.
because it was a repeat of almost what I
Hello.
had, and I got real good test scores.
I'll bet you did.
So he said, well, he said, you scored pretty good on that. He said, we'll give you advanced training, whatever you want to do with advanced training. And in boot camp, I met up with a fellow from New Orleans. His name was Ulises Gomez. And I was all calling him Lefty Gomez because there was a baseball
Sure.
player named Lefty Gomez. And I said, Lefty, what do you think we ought to do? He said, I don't know. There was radio and radar and all that. And I said, how about gyro compasses and navigation? He said, yeah, he said, that sounds good. It's mechanical and in that too. So,
Sure.
yeah, we signed up for gyros. Next thing you know, we were on a train going out to Seattle, Washington.
No
We
kidding.
didn't know where it was.
Going out to Bremerton, huh?
No, we went out to Lake Union, right
Oh, right in Seattle.
in Seattle.
Oh.
Spent 18 weeks out there. Well, we spent 18 weeks in Great Lakes going to electrical school. Then we spent 18 weeks out there.
Now, when you came out of Great Lakes, were you seaman first, or did you get
No, I
a
was
break?
third class
You
electrician.
got a third class right away.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And then we went up to Seattle, and we spent 18 weeks up there going to school. And there was a real nice canteen up there by the Navy Hospital in Seattle, and we had a good time up there. We
Yeah.
were really enjoying that.
Yeah.
And about 2 weeks before we were to graduate, the commander of the post said, I want to see you in my office. Uh-oh, now what? So he goes in and he says, sit down. He said, I got a proposition for you. Uh-oh, this don't sound good. He says, one of my instructors wants to quit instructing and go to sea. He said, all these ships sailing out of Seattle, he wants sea duty.
Sure.
He says, how about you taking over his class? And he said, I know you got a girlfriend up there in Seattle at the hospital. I said, yeah, I have. He says, well, you'll be on the post here all the time then. You got boarding and everything else right here. And he says, how about it? And I said, no, I signed up to go into the Navy. And this is not the Navy to me. This is not the Navy. So then they handed us a list, Gomez and I, a list of 3 pages with 2 lines of ships on it that we could choose from. And he was from New Orleans, so he said, hey, there's a ship called Texas on here. I said, yeah, I said, that thing's over in Europe, you know, running convoy duties. He says, I said, well, there's something big's going to happen over there. Let's sign up for that. So we did. And we were shipped over to New York.
So where did you meet up with the Texas? In France?
In New York.
Oh, in New York?
On Hudson River,
Oh,
yeah.
she was here, and you went
Yeah,
across on her.
Well, she was in the landing at Casablanca
Yeah, that's right, North Africa.
on North Africa. When we got into New York, and we were at Pier 92 stationed there, so we had 30 days to do New York. He had some family in Yonkers, but it took so long to get up there. We could stay over the weekend up there.
Yeah.
But then we start going, well, I went to Radio City. I saw the
Rockettes.
I saw, yeah, Carmen, the opera. And they had a baritone that sang Donkey Serenade in that place. It made your chest vibrate.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. And then all those girls, you know, of course they're all old women now, but boy, they were beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Went up on 42nd Street
That
and
was
saw,
first class, man.
yes, went up on 42nd Street and saw the stage show Tobacco Road. And if you know that building that's in Times Square, that's V-shaped, where the ball comes down on it, go back about 600 feet on the left-hand side on the second floor is a skating rink.
I'll be done.
So we did New York.
Man, you really had good duty.
Yeah, it was fun. And then we
Yeah.
went aboard the ship in 43. It was August of 43.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, standing on the fantail of that ship when she went down through the harbor and out past the Statue of Liberty and started out to sea, I'm 20 years old. And I've never seen a big body of water than Grand Lake here in St. Mary's, Ohio.
Up the way here.
That was the biggest body of water I saw. And I'm standing there, that little ship's vibrating and the water's coming out behind that thing and it's pushing me out to foreign land that I only read about, you know. And I watched the New York City and the Statue of Liberty just sink into the water.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what have I got myself in for?
Yeah.
So then our chief...
No, the Texas had she'd had some pretty good duty in World War I, hadn't
Yes,
she?
she did.
Yeah, off France, yeah.
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 But I was placed in turret number 2 as an electrician when I went in there. And I got talking to one of the chiefs there, Smithy, and he said, what did you do in civilian life? I said, well, I was an electrician in a machine tool company. And I said, every once in a while, I operated a 50-ton crane, moving the machinery around on the floor on weekends when the regular operator wasn't there. He said, you operate a 50-ton crane? I said, yep. He said, come with me. We went up on the deck and went up on the starboard crane. And he said, you know, familiar with these controls? Oh, sure. He said, put that hook down there on hatch number 3, the third latch up on that. I started it up, put it down on there. And I'll put it in the center of that coil of wire, rope down there. Put it in the center there. And he says, well, he said, oh, you'll do. He said, from now on, this is your general quarter station.
Oh.
So then and when we took on stores, I wasn't allowed to move that crane unless the boatswain give me the whistle sign, right, left, up, down, and all that. But then at sea, when we were refueling the destroyers, halfway across, they couldn't make a full crossing. They'd pull up alongside, and I'd lift up the hose, and they had to shoot a line over, light line, then they'd pull a heavy line, and then I'd hold the hose up over the ships. They were rocking and bouncing around, and for them to refuel. And sometimes that deck of that destroyer would be almost up to my crane, and bouncing around.
Refueling at sea was...
And then he didn't tell me either that I was going to have to pick up the seaplane that we had. We had 2 Kingfish seaplanes on turret 3. And when they wanted to send out over the convoy for reconnaissance, I'd have to pick the back one up and hold it over the side while they launched one. Then I'd put that on the launching cradle, and then we were always zigzagging back and forth anyway, but then when the ship made a turn like this to starboard, a real nice slick comes out on the water, and he would land on that. Then the ship never stopped for anything. And there was a big arm that come down off the side of the ship past my crane, and it was like a big cargo net that floated out across the top of the water. And he would come on, land on that slick, and then he would come up alongside the ship, bouncing around, you know, until he got up on that cargo net, and then he would try to idle it down and see if he got that. There was a hook on the bottom of his pontoon that would hook into that. So he was traveling the same speed we were. Then the radio man would open the canopy and stand up, and he had a cable fastened to the ship, and there was a steel ring about that big around that he would stand up and hold it up like this, and I'd drop the hook down. And I'd have to keep going up and down as the waves bounced him around, and then he'd put it over there, and I'd pick him up and bring him back aboard the ship.
How about
So,
that was pretty dicey operation, wasn't it?
yes, it was. Yeah. you had to be careful you didn't put the hook in the canopy or into the pilot or into the
rip
engine.
that thing apart, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now, was the Texas still coal-fired at that time, or
No, she was oil fired.
she was oil?
Yeah. I think in 28 or something like that.
Okay,
they made
I
her
got you.
oil fired.
Well, that was, that was a blessing too, because
Oh, yes.
had coal pretty bad on those old ships. Well, how long did it, you said you couldn't get across without being refueled, is that what you were saying?
Not our ship, no. We would refuel the destroyers.
You'd refuel the destroyer?
Yes, and behind
That's
us,
what I wondered about.
and behind us was a tanker all the time, and she would
Right.
refuel the destroyers. They'd
Right.
come up on both sides of the ship
Yeah,
for refueling.
yeah, because you had a lot of capability there on that battleship.
Oh, yes.
You could do anything. Those were amazing. I never got aboard a battleship. Always wanted to during the war. But anyway, how long did it take you to get across? Did you go to England?
It
or
would
did
take
you
us
go to-
about 9 days to make a crossing. We were traveling about 9 knots an hour.
Yeah,
We couldn't go any faster because of the supply ships and that. They were loaded and they were slow to begin with.
right.
And then we dropped them off around Scotland there, and we'd go into Belfast, Ireland, and anchor in there. And we'd be there about 3 days, and you could go ashore. And by that time, they were assembling empties for us to bring back.
Ah,
And we went ashore in Belfast, Ireland. And I never will forget the Red Cross. I never forgive them. We wanted to stay overnight one night, and we walked down to Red Cross and said, hey, we'd like to put up for a night, you know. And Red Cross said, yeah, they signed us up and everything. And said, that would be $2. I said, what do you mean? Well, we have to pay for the laundry and all that. And we're making about $67 a month at that time. I said, I'm not going to pay that. The hell with you. Walked up the street, and Salvation Army took us right in, fed us in the morning, give us showers and everything else.
Wonderful.
Didn't cost us a thing. So we
Wonderful.
donated $2.
wonderful outfit, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, they were always there for everybody.
And the Red Cross did the same thing in Palermo, Sicily.
Yeah,
When we were on shore there,
yeah.
they were selling beer and shot of whiskey for $1 a piece. And we had a little kid there that could speak both Italian and English. And for $1, we got a liter bottle of wine.
How about that?
So I don't have much to do with Red Cross. Salvation Army, yes.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Did the Texas do convoy duty at all?
Oh, yes, sure. I was on it for the winter of 43 and 44 before Normandy.
So did you go up to Murmansk around the North Cape?
Well, we went up north, what they call the North Atlantic, past Newfoundland
Yeah.
and all those places. Yeah, we didn't go this way, it's too long. Went up over the top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But we would run over there, and then we'd pick up empties and bring them back to New York or Boston or up in New England, Portland, Bangor, and then we would pick up a new convoy and take that across. Then we'd come back, we might be on any one of those ports again for 3 days before we...
Now, did the Texas fire her big rifles at sea or anything like that?
No.
You didn't have any
No.
surface combat or firing at
No,
enemy
we didn't.
aircraft or anything?
No, we didn't do it. No. The only time I remember our aircraft batteries flying was at Normandy.
Normandy.
Yeah, we were one of the only ships that fired on Nazi airplanes and Japanese airplanes.
Right. Now, so there you were, and June the 6th, 1944, tell us about that.
Well, that's pretty much what I was telling you. Before, we went to Great Lakes for boot camp and then schooling. And then
But
back
I
to
mean,
ship.
the action, you got on here, Normandy, June the 6th.
Oh, yeah.
1944.
Yeah. Yes, 44, yes.
Well, what was your experience?
Well, I was on the main deck at that time, and of course we opened up our barrage with our...
You were still a turret too?
No, I was a crane operator.
That was a great
all the time, yeah.
Okay.
And they opened up with our big guns on the beach, and then we backed off from there, and we were watching these landing craft go in. And on the beach, the German 88s had it laid out almost like a piano thing. Certain ones were zeroed in on this section, zeroed in on this section at the water's edge. So when the landing craft hit the beach, we found out there was spotters in the church tower at Port Lahar, and they were telling them number 3 gun or whatever, and they were blowing the first wave got in real good. Second wave really got clobbered. And while we were sitting there, then they had these personnel carriers that got cleats on them, you know.
Yeah.
It looked like a tank without the top. And they were coming around there, and the Navy had sunk 2 cement barges along there for breakwater, because the chop on the channel was about 3 foot.
Yeah.
And they were coming around there in groups and going around trying to get behind the breakwater in this calm water. And everyone would all stand there. We didn't know what to do. We counted 7 of those sink, because the water, they fill full of water. And those guys were trying to bail it out with their helmets and everything else, and some of them just stood there. And then when the thing gets down, they stood up on the gunwale on it and just stepped off in the water. And a lot of them had their full backpack on and their rifle in their hand, stepping off into the water. They were told, I guess, in training, never look over your gun, because that's your lifeline, you know. And we watched them, some of them never even come up once. 7 of them out of one group that went down. Later on, there was some coming around, and they had big poles going up out of the 4 corners, and it was big blue canvas around to keep the waves from going into the units. But that was sickening. You were sitting right there watching them go down, and there wasn't anything you could do.
I know. Nothing you could do. Absolutely nothing.
And the landing barges, whenever they hit a sand dune or in water, if they happened to run up on it, the guys had to get out. They didn't care whether the water was ankle deep or waist deep or shoulder deep. They had to get out so that they could back off and get that weight out and get the boat floating.
Sure.
So we watched all of that. And when we gave our final salute going drive past, we ride past and everybody stands and salutes. And when we left there, it was about around the 25th, around the 25th, I think it was. Everybody saluted, and we could see that rise in the ground back there, and they were stacking those poor guys up 3 deep, 3 high, the length of a football field.
Yeah.
They were always popping up, there were bodies floating everywhere. They were popping up, and the acid's creating gas in the body and bringing them up.
Right. Yeah, it must have been terrible. Did the enemy fire from shore at the Texas?
No, we never received any of that. There was planes that flew over at one point. We
Dive
fired
bombers
them.
and so forth.
We fired the planes, and at that time too, we could still see those damn things, rockets flying into England. Like a pop, 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 pop sound as they went past while we were around there.
Yeah, they had that motor on them, didn't they?
Yeah.
Son of a gun. Oh my gosh, that must have been some experience, Buzz.
Well, then we had they knew that there were spotters in that little church in Port Lahar, so we were called to go up and take the church out. And we have 3 5-inch guns on the starboard side and on the port side. and they were told to take the church out, and they took the steeple off and about half of the front of the church off.
Wow.
And then went down to Point La Harve down there, where Angel Point, where they put 200 Rangers ashore down there. The English did, and they were off target. And those guys got a beating. We went down there and picked them up, and when the landing craft brought them out, and there was some German prisoners that they brought out too. So we took German prisoners aboard our ship, and
Oh, you did?
and we had for interrogation, and then there was 52 Rangers left out of 200 that we picked up, and the bullets on our doctor said they were down through their body when they were trying to climb up. The Germans were up on the top shooting down on them.
Oh, it must have been a terrifying.
We transferred those over to the hospital ship then.
Mhm.
We worked on them. We had 2 operating rooms in our ship.
You did?
Worked on them while we were transporting them over to the hospital ship.
Right. How many were in the crew of the Texas? You remember?
A little better than 1,600.
About 1,600.
Yeah, almost about 1,700
Mm-hmm.
full crew.
Right.
There was 63 electricians in the electrical department.
63 electricians. Wow. That's a big contingent. And then, of course, you had the Navy flyers there and the aviation mechanics
Yeah,
for the seaplanes.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They would handle the seaplane once it got up, like from the deck. They would have ropes and that on it to guide it, and I'd just pick it up and put it back on the launcher on the turret 3. Yeah, and they tie it down.
Yeah, that was always an amazing operation to me. You know, for a battleship or a cruiser. Some cruisers had observation planes too, but. Well, now, how long were you there at Normandy?
I think I got a date there when we left.
Oh, yeah. You've got
25th.
June 6th to the 26th,
Yeah,
1944.
right.
Okay. all
Then
right.
we went into Plymouth, England.
Came back to Plymouth.
Yeah, and then Eisenhower came aboard the ship and all that. And
Oh, we did.
Then we sailed out of there for Cherbourg, France. We were losing so many troops and so much equipment trying to get ashore on that landing spot. So there was the Texas and the sister ship New York, Arkansas, and the Nevada. 4 battleships went into the port in Cherbourg.
Hmm.
And when we pulled in there about 9 o'clock in the morning, they said, no activity around the German shore guns. And they kept reporting that, and all of a sudden, right at noon, big shells kept falling, boom, 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 all around us. Man, we split up and we were running. They had a rectangular minesweeper swept it out, and we were running figure-8s in there. And destroyers were whooping it up and throwing smoke screens and everything else. And for 3 hours, we fought with the short guns there. And they were 9 inches and 11 inches. And they were dropping all around. They were bracking us and everything else. And we opened up with our big guns, and we had 5 turrets with 2 guns in each, 14-inch guns in each turret. And while they were firing, I was on the main deck with a couple other guys, and well, quite a few guys were still on the main deck. And when a turret fires, they ring a bell 3 times, and on the 3rd time, you're supposed to open your mouth and yell to equalize the pressure from that concussion. And we didn't know which turret was firing. There was 3 of them that were firing back there, and we were bouncing around from the concussion like ping pong balls. And we got hit in a bow with a 9-inch shell, and it didn't explode, but it was rolling around, and damage control went up and took care of that, defused it. And that's still in a souvenir down where the Texas is, down in Texas now in Memorial. And then 11-incher come in, and you could see these shells coming. and the German shells are tapered about 2/3 of the way back. And that nose of that thing wobbles like this. That's what makes all that noise. The American shells are tapered about 1/3, and then the rest of it is
Solid.
But that thing come in, and I turned around and was headed for the deck fast, like that. And that thing exploded and hit the conning tower and exploded right up underneath our navigation bridge, wiped out our navigation bridge. And when I was turned around going down, and all of a sudden, wham, I wanted to hit the deck here, and I hit about 4 or 5 feet beyond where I intended to hit it. And I said, Stoney, what the hell did you push me for? He said, I didn't push you. We were right there together.
Wow.
So then, we were pretty well wounded. Our navigation bridge was out, and they were trying to communicate with the conning tower to steer the ship, because we were headed for the old Arkansas. I think we could have probably hit that thing if they hadn't corrected it. And with turret 4 and 5 firing over the fantail, the concussion blew up the paint lockers. Paint lockers were all along the fantail on the back of the ship. And that come all apart and a big fire started. So Stoney and I grabbed these fire extinguishers that get chemicals that turn upside down like a foam. Oh man, we got down there and we couldn't empty them in seconds. Couldn't really do anything. Fire control showed up and started working on the fire. And then the anti-aircraft crew there was manned by Marines. They were on a fantail on the starboard side there, and they kept motioning for Stoney. Come over, come over, come over. I went over there, and what do you want? They're handing us these clips with 4 40-millimeter shells in them. And those things are about that long, about that big around, and there's 4 of them in a clip. And they were handing us these clips, throw them over the side, throw them over the side. And they were hot. We were taking them over and throwing them over the side of the ship. And because inside of that steel ring that you see around the aircraft, there's all welded pockets in there. And they keep extra clips in there in case the conveyor belt coming up out of the magazine stops working or anything else. They still got clips in there. So that's all we were doing, running about 20 feet over the side of the ship and throwing them over the side of the ship. Opened up our life jackets and we were holding them like this. And we had to get them out over the blister on the ship. That's just stuck out about maybe 3 feet, like an extra tank on the side. Because if it had hit that steel decking down there, it would have exploded too. Or if one of them would have exploded inside of that anti-aircraft thing with that 3/4 inch steel around it, it would have wiped out the whole thing. It would have wiped, other ones would have went off too then.
Very good. How thick was the armor belt around that ship?
Well, the armor on it was 14 for 14-inch gun.
14 inches.
Yeah.
Now, did the Texas still have the old tripod mast?
Yes, it had a kind of a lace-like thing originally, but then they put a tripod on. Yeah.
Yeah, Texas and Wyoming, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Several of those. Arkansas, I guess. Yeah. Well, Buzz, that was just incredible. Was there a recoil from the firing of the big rifles?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes, definitely.
And of course I've seen the pictures of the flattening of the water, after the projectile went out.
Well, that was a concussion that did that.
Wow.
And if you're standing, 30 feet away from one of the muzzles, you're going to get knocked down.
Now, how about your hearing? Did it affect your hearing?
Yes, it did.
Uh-huh.
Yes, very definitely.
You didn't use earplugs?
No, well, I had earphones on in case I was called to operate the crane for any reason.
See.
So I didn't have regular earplugs, no.
Yeah, that was very, very common, having hearing problems. Well, now, after Normandy, then you went around a month later around to southern France. You went around through.
We went into
past
Mediterranean. Past Gibraltar and stopped in Oran, Africa there for a while, about 2 or 3 weeks. And then we went into French Algiers.
Yeah.
We were there for 3 or 4 weeks. Then we went up to Toronto, Italy, and we anchored there for a while, waiting for all this other equipment for the invasion to come up. Then we went from Toronto to Palermo, Sicily, and we couldn't even get in the harbor up in Palermo because all the fishing vessels and everything else was all sunk in that area. So we waited, and then when the rest of the ships landing, you know, for the invasion that showed up, and then we went into there.
Did you get ashore in Italy?
In Toronto, Italy, we were allowed in New Toronto. We weren't allowed into Old Toronto, Italy, no. Got ashore in Algiers, and I was assigned, because I'd taken some shore patrol work over in Seattle, and I was assigned to shore patrol from the ship. And I had to go to the French police headquarters and report to them. And the only reason they had us was to keep the sailors from going into Casbar, you know, and getting them out of the bars when it's time to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't want to listen to the French cops. They just wanted to kick the shit out of them.
Yeah, right.
And then in the Mediterranean too, where we did have people from a French ship come aboard, and they ate with us, and they had a meal and spent a day with us, and then we went aboard a French ship. I don't remember the name of it, but it was so cruddy. We were glad to get back off of it.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, it was cruddy. The sailors in that, if they had to take a leak, they'd just go over the rail and piss over the side of the ship. No, that's not right.
Not right at
didn't even
all.
wash their hands or anything else, you know.
Gee, I know.
That's-
Yeah, the French had a reputation for being pretty loose about things like that. Well, you know, it's interesting though, you're talking about southern France, although you weren't in on the landings of
No,
southern
we were firepower going into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then what we would do, same as we did at all the other places, we would hit the back lines when they
Yeah.
were coming up. Like Normandy, we were knocking out railroad stations, and convoy trucks and everything else were coming up to the front.
yeah, that was very important, wasn't it, that you knocked out the transportation system
Yes,
of the enemy,
yeah.
the rails and the marshalling yards and
Yeah, they couldn't get ammunition back
yeah,
up there then.
right. Gosh, Buzz, you really had some tremendous experiences. I'm just amazed. Now you say on here you got over to Iwo Jima on the 16th of February,
Yes.
44.
After we come out of
45.
Yeah, 45. When we
45.
come out of Mediterranean, we went into the Navy shipyards, Brooklyn Navy shipyards,
Brooklyn Navy Yard.
and
Wow.
they overhauled us. They took our big guns off, and because all the rifling was driven out of the barrels themselves from firing so much.
Sure.
See, those big barrels are all cast iron, and the lining in what gives the shell a twist is steel. So that it would expand, and then that steel would be forced out as the shells went out.
How about that?
So they took some of our guns off and reworked them, put new anti-aircraft in, and we were in there for about 30 days. And Gomez and I got 10 days leave out of the 30 days. That was traveling time and everything else to go to Cincinnati and come back. Found out why when we got back. They put us in school right there. When we had to learn all about all the new gyros, that Armor Mark 8s that they put in, and all the new thermometer logs that, you know, and there's a sword that goes out the bottom of the ship that we have to put out, and it's got holes in the front and back and two on the side, and they're hooked up to the thermometer log with hoses. And what that does is the ones on the sides give a static reading, how deep the ship's sitting in the water. The one in the front and back is dynamic reading, how fast the ship's moving in the water. So that's important to know when you get into, you know, we're in the Pacific, how much clearance you got. If you got a ship that's loaded down with ammunition and fuel, and that's going to sit pretty low in the water. So going in some of those harbors, why you had to be pretty careful. So we ended up in school,
Mm-hmm. Sure, you had to learn all that new
Yes.
technician,
Right.
technology.
That was all new to us. And then,
Now, did you have anything to do with the radar?
no,
No.
no, that was
That was strictly radar
something else.
personnel, yeah. Well, now, we want to get to the Pacific here because you've got so much to talk about. It's just
Well, we went over in the Pacific after we come out.
Now,
of
Ewo was secured by the time you got there.
Ewo? No.
No, it wasn't?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. We spent Christmas in Hawaii, and then went out into the Pacific, and our first adventure was Iwo Jima.
Mm-hmm.
And that island was about 3 miles wide and about 7 miles long with
Yeah.
Surapaki on the end. And we also bombarded Ayashima before we got there. It's on the west side of Okinawa, I'm sorry. But we would circle the island, and there was Nevada, and Arkansas, and New Yorker, and we were using our big guns hitting Surabaki.
Yeah.
And that's the first time and we weren't in general quarters then because we weren't under any threat at that time. So we were watching. I ended up in the gyro room, and Gomez and I ended up in the gyro room in Brooklyn. So that was our station, and I was out of the crane. But that's the first place that I saw tanks that were flamethrowers.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of going up there, and when we were cruising around there, and before that island was even secured, there was planes landing on it.
Yeah.
And then we saw that first flag that go up on Iwo Jima. It was on a little tree trunk that was real crooked, and a real little flag.
And it was a small flag.
Yes, we saw that go up, and when we saw it, everybody's cheering. When it saw it come down, oh no,
Oh,
you know. Then we witnessed them putting up that flag
The
to
big
see all the
flag.
pictures of it.
The famous one that Joe
Yes.
Rosenthal took a picture of, yeah. Well, my gosh, you just saw so much history, Buzz. That's just amazing. All that duty and everything. Now, Okinawa was
That was
pretty
tough.
interesting too, wasn't
That
it?
was tough.
Tough, yeah.
When we got in
Terrible
there,
campaign.
yeah, we had to go general quarters. So Lefty and I were down in the back gyro room. That was down by the engine rooms, and there was only one hatch going out, and you had to climb the ladders that were welded to the bulkhead. And when we went into that gyro room, it was maybe not quite about like where Coop's sitting there. It had main gyros and all that. There was 2 main gyros on the ship. And then power supplies and switches for switching gyros back and forth on the whole ship. And they put us down in there, and they latched that hatch from the top. There's no way we could open that hatch. And we were there for 53 days. And the chaplain was telling us on the PA system what was going on Okinawa.
You were not out in the open at all.
Oh no, we were
53
down in
days.
in that room.
That's,
And the only time we ever saw anybody was at 8 o'clock in the morning. They'd open the hatch and they'd drop a canister of water down with a pump on it. With a big aluminum thing about it like that with a pump on it. And then they would take our canister up on a hook, and then they would drop a bucket, a regular scrub bucket with about 3 inches of oil in it. That was our toilet. And then we'd hook ours on it, and they'd take it up and empty it. And then they would throw us down a box of K rations. And we wouldn't see anybody again until 8 o'clock next morning.
my goodness, 53 days.
And we're in the same clothes, and it smelled like a damn stockyard down there
Oh my gosh.
by the time we got out of there. And
Brother.
when they finally opened the hatch, we couldn't even climb the ladder. They dropped down a rope with a loop on it, and they put it over our head and under our arms this way. And they were
Lifted you up.
taking our body weight while we were climbing the ladder.
Sure.
It was just so weak being
Oh my
there.
gosh.
And we didn't have anything to sleep on because we weren't expected to do anything then, you know. So they took good care of us then. But boy, I'll tell you what, even now, my wife always told me I was weird. When I went into a restaurant, I had to sit by an exit. Or if I go into the bathroom, I have to have the door open.
Yeah.
Or I have to have an escape route.
Yeah.
And no matter where I go. And she said, wow, you're weird. So she finally divorced me in 1990. And then she called me back about 11, 12 months later. And she said, we got to talk. And I said, why in the hell didn't we do that before? And, you know, marriage counselor or something like that. You know, come over and we'll talk. And then I told her what I went through. And then we got remarried.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, isn't that something? What a great thing. What a great thing. And you're still married?
Well, I was up until November the 13th when she died.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We were married 62 years.
How about that? Oh, boy. My gosh, you have had something. Now, also, I'm curious to know, what happened to Lefty Gomez?
He went back to New Orleans and he was a tune-up man and brake job for a Cadillac dealer down there. And he died of melanoma.
Oh.
From asbestos from all that brake work.
Oh, I see.
Because they used asbestos in all them drum brakes at that time.
Sure.
We did get to go ashore at Iwo Jima. We went down to Guam. We come back from Guam to Okinawa, and they let us go ashore. And they told us, don't eat any of the fruit or vegetables or anything else because they use human feces for fertilizer.
Yeah.
Then we found out while we were shooting, supposed to be gun emplacements, were burial vaults. The big cement thing, fan-like, and there was a little door in the center of that, about, maybe 3 foot high and about so wide. And the inside was all shelves around, big dome, and then there was tables in the center. And when somebody died in Okinawa, they'd take them in there and let the meat rot off the bones, and then a virgin girl would have to go in and scrape all the bones off, meat off the bones and paint them white. Then they would put them in these big crocks, and they would have family sections that they would put them on a shelf. Cope knows about that.
Wow.
He knows what I'm talking about there. And
You saw so much. That's just amazing. And I wanted to, I wanted to point out, right down here in our library in the atrium on the main floor is memorabilia from the USS Cincinnati, the cruiser, that she got her battle star at the landings in southern France in the summer of '44, later in '44. And I didn't know if you knew about that or not, but
No, I didn't.
yeah, and they've got the bell, the ship's bell down there and everything. And so it's a wonderful display. But anyway, what did you see? We've still got a little time. What did you see on Okinawa, for example?
Well,
Besides the burial.
That's about the only thing
That was
that
about
we
it.
see. Yeah, we didn't go down to the docks. Cope gave me hell for our ship blowing up all the damn wharfs and docks because he had to rebuild them.
We did that.
Yeah, but it wasn't much to see.
Yeah.
They took out a water tower there, that was a big water tower, and they told me that somebody hit a big white horse that was standing on a hillside. They shot the poor horse and that, but there really wasn't much to see for us.
Okinawa was a pretty good sized island.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, at one point we were called out of Buckner Bay. See, we made a fake landing on the southern tip when the main force hit the east coast, and we had landing craft in the water and everything else, and then to keep the Japanese down in the south port. Then we picked them all up and went around to Buckner Bay and made a landing there that cut the island in half. So then the Marines went north on Okinawa and the Army went south. So we sat in Buckner Bay. Whenever they run into troop concentration with the tanks or trucks or whatever it was, they give us a location, we'd lob a couple of shells up in there, and they'd correct our range, and then we'd open up full broadside until they said all clear. And did the same way with the Army going south.
Right.
Then we got a call there was so many kamikazes coming in to Okinawa. So we had the latest radar from Brooklyn. So we cruised up, and we were 350 miles south of Japan between there and Okinawa. And for 6 days and 6 nights. And we had destroyers and light cruisers around us. And that was our job, to intercept planes. Because we could shoot at planes and it's still in the clouds. All those other ones, they had to wait for them to come out of the clouds to shoot at them. That was very, but then the Pennsylvania took over our duty in Buckner Bay, and she took a fish in a bomb in the fantail. She was thinking the whole deck was awash in the fantail of the ship, and the tow boats were pulling them out and taking her to Philippines for repair, and we had to come back into Buckner Bay for our fire control again. And after that, then we went down to Guam and then came back, you know.
Where did you get, you finally, of course you had plenty of points for discharge.
Oh, I had enough points in September, but I
Sure.
had to wait for a replacement because Gomez was gone. He got an early release. His dad was a barge handler on Mississippi, and he drowned. And it left four boys and 2 girls in that Gomez family.
Wow. Do you have any connection with any of your shipmates now?
Now, oh yeah, we had reunions quite often. And we had then, instead of going to Houston, we had some up in Hamilton where one of the guys lives. And they were coming from West Virginia and from Rhode Island, a couple of there were coming over and we stayed a weekend at his place.
Well, it's wonderful to have that, you know, you have that camaraderie with your shipmates that cannot be replaced. I mean, that was unique. And you know, our mortality rate today is pretty high.
Yes.
We're dying World War II vets anywhere from, I see estimates anywhere from 500 to 700 a day now. And when you think that 16.5 million people served in the military during World War II, you know, we're down below 2 million people. It's quite something. Well, you got back to Cincinnati and you got married and you had children, and here you are.
And here I am.
And hanging on.
Yeah, barely.
God bless. Well, it's just been a great privilege, Buzz, to speak with you, and you do have a great story to tell. Everybody has a great story to tell.
Well, I didn't think it was that great.
Well, it
took some priming to get me here.
Well, it's just wonderful, and we don't get as many Navy people as I'd like to have. Of course, the Navy was far outnumbered by the Army, but nevertheless, it's important to get those stories. And you covered so much, the Atlantic and the Pacific, you know, and all those campaigns and all those different places you saw, and the good duty that you had.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I really,
Some of it was good, and some of it I wouldn't want to relieve.
oh no, wouldn't want to do it again. But you know, you wouldn't trade it for anything today.
Yeah, I didn't.
It was an experience.
It was an experience,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you that I wouldn't want to go through that.
Oh no, never again. But it's something that we're very, very fortunate to have had. It's been a great pleasure, Buzz.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate
Thank you so very much, and I know that your family and friends are going to enjoy it because you get a DVD of this, and they'll be able to see it for. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that piece of metal. Holy cow!
I was just going to pick it up.
Wow, that's a heavy piece. That came from a what?
That came from a 11-inch shore gun, German shore gun.
German.
When it hit our navigation bridge, wiped out our navigation bridge, and I told you I made a dive for the deck.
Sure.
This is what hit me in the back of my life jacket, up in the collar.
Wow.
And when we were finished fighting the fire, Stoney put his arm around my shoulder and I put my arm around his shoulder. He says, "Hey, what's the matter with you?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "There's something sharp there." And took off my life jacket, and we dug this out of my life jacket.
Good heavens. Why, that's enough to kill a man. Oh, that's absolutely amazing.
That's what knocked me down when I made a dive for the deck.
Isn't that amazing?
I cleaned it up and I got polyurethane on
Yeah,
it
that's
to keep it from
nice.
rusting.
That's nice. Well, God bless you. You, sir, were a lucky man.
I think so.
The good Lord was with you.
Somebody was looking after me.
I should say so. Well, thank you again, Buzz, and keep up the good work. You're a great guy.